Hi guys, welcome back to part 2. This is the second part of a series of videos in which I'm fabricating a replacement end for a brake line. This is to go in a Volvo XC90 around the wheel arch to the right hand side front corner. In the first part we fabricated the pipe itself. If you haven't watched that already, I'd encourage you to do so. That link is in the description down below. However, if you are just interested in how to flare the ends, let's crack on. Now I'm using here copper and nickel pipe. It's a little bit hard. So a standard flaring kit, cheap as chips, £24, I think that's about $31 at the time of recording, will be more than adequate. However, we can give ourselves a fighting chance here. So, tools that we're going to need for this particular procedure: we need the flaring mould and die. We need the clamp that's going to squish it into place. Show you how that works very shortly. Need a little reamer just to clean out the end of the pipe where it's been cut, and just to make this a little bit more interesting, we need some mortar. We need a little blowtorch. Always good. So what we're going to do to soften the pipe is we're going to anneal it, and what that means is basically heat it up to cherry red and then quench it. What that does is it sort of frees up the molecules in the metal which may have become hard over time. Certainly they work harden, and that allows us then to manipulate those molecules a little bit more easily. I did give myself around about an inch or so more than I needed on each end when I fabricated this, so I'm just going to trim that off. So the full process, assuming that we have just manufactured that top section, I'm going to just clamp the pipe into the cutter, trim the end off it. There we go. Twist, tighten, twist, tighten. Keep on going with that. What this is going to do is going to give us a very clean end, but it's also going to squish a little bit of the pipe into the inside, partially blocking the pipe. Now the die that we're going to be using to flare the end does partially resolve that, but there being any burrs or anything on the inside is going to stop you getting that little tool. So little deburring tool here. I'm just going to take out the end there, and of course being very careful that you haven't contaminated it with brake fluid from other parts. Just going to blow through that and give it a tap just to make sure that there's no little copper filings in there that could find their way into the brake caliper itself. Just going to test that. Yep, the die fits in just fine. Now let's anneal this. As I mentioned, all we have to do to achieve this is heat it to red hot and then quench it. There we go, a nice cherry red, and quench it. That is it. Now, could clean that up if you really want to, but not really a lot of point. I am going to put the threaded piece on the end before I do anything else, because if you forget that, no matter how good the flare is that you create, and let me assure you that you will create the best flare of your life, if you forgot to put that on, you have to cut it off. This will not go around the corners, so you can't put it on from the other end. You have to thread that on before you flare the thing. Now, as I mentioned in a short, it may have bought you here actually, if you want to create a double flare using this particular tool, well, an awful lot of the cheap tools that are out there, you use the side with the countersink. However, I don't want to create a double flare, I want to create a bubble flare. The difference between a double flare and a bubble flare, apart from the fact it's a two-stage operation to create a double flare, as the name may suggest, is that it's a flat back on a bubble flare, also known as ISO, also known as DIN. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the tool over. It is as simple as that. As you can see with these examples here, the one at the top has a flat back and a rounded top, kind of like a dome head screw. That one is referred to as a bubble flare. The one at the bottom has a rounded base and a rounded top, and then the top of that is further turned in, so it flares and then a further flare is pushed into it. That's called a double flare. We're going to pop that in here, clamp it in place. You will find with some of these little tools that there is a lip on the back that tells you how high you have to go. That's for the other side. So what it's assuming is that the thickness of the backing plate there, in addition to what's in the hole already, is going to give you the right thickness. So we want to go a little bit thicker than that, not a lot, about probably 1/8 of an inch, somewhere around there. And we need to put this in the hole. Now that is going to have to come back out again. So what I'm going to do, using just a tiny little bit of copper grease here, tiny little smidge, is I'm going to pop that in there, and we are now ready. Now I might need to adjust this a little bit to get the clamp on, and this is the ultimate check on whether or not you've got the die far enough in. Yeah, just about perfect. We slip that on. The die has a hole in the top of it. You wind the thing into the press here into that hole. Really important just to take a look down the end, make sure that things are nice and straight. And then at that point, with the nice freshly annealed soft pipe, we just wind it all together. Don't need to go crazy with it, just wind until it stops, and then come back. Take the tape out, unlock the tool, and there's your bubble joint. Simple as that, really. You do the other end. I would say again, you want to aim for a nice thickness there. Make sure that you have plenty to push into the female part of the mould. It won't mate on all the surfaces all the way around, usually just around the outside edge. Same thing again, this end's actually okay lengthwise. Put this piece on first. I'm just going to use the reaming tool to clean out the inside of that hole, as before. Really be careful with those filings, and as before, anneal it. Okay, exactly the same deal as before. Always double check, make sure you've got your fittings in place. We're going to pop that through. Make sure we're there or thereabouts with the thickness, it'll soon let you know if it's through too far, so I'm not going to tighten it all up just yet. Pop that down. A little bit of copper grease on the spindle. Into the freshly annealed copper. Wind this back as far as it'll go. Slide it on. Now this time I'm not going to be able to get that to fit. I'm going to have to just move it down just a tiny little bit. I'll just back both of these off. Just need to move it down about 0.5 millimetre, literally a tiny amount. So I know that's going to fit. Tighten that back up properly. There we go. Okay, once again, line this up, make sure it's all nice, looks about right, and wind it in. Don't need to go crazy, but as soon as it bottoms out, you're good to go. Now if you want to at this point, you could always unwind these, push a little bit more through, give it another go if you want, just to give a bit more meat on the bone at the end there. Don't need to, but can. Let's just do that here now. So for anyone who's worried about not having quite enough metal present for it to be a good solid joint, we can just push that over again. Again, really important to make sure that it's square on. Tighten everything up and give it a twist. Because this is freshly annealed, it's nice and soft, and it will very willingly oblige us. And there we go. Just undo this. Set that off. One bubble flare, ready to be fitted to the vehicle. In fact, two. There you go, that's it. For a double flare, the difference is that you first use the die and then finish it off by turning the corners back in with the centre of the point. It's a two-stage operation, but I'll do another video on that at some point. If you are interested, please leave a comment down below if that's what you want to see. Bottom line, I don't use them very often. As I say, I tend to work on European cars that have the ISO/DIN/bubble flare equivalent. But if you want to, I'll very happily make you a video showing how to do the two-stage operation for a double flare. There you go guys, just for comparison, the fresh cupro nickel one at the top there, ready to be pressed into the female part of the mould. Once it goes in there, of course, it will deform very slightly to look exactly like the one on the bottom, which is the original steel piece that's been in there for 18 years. There you go. So how to use a standard double flaring kit to achieve a near perfect bubble flare. Thanks very much guys. If you like what you've seen, if this has been at all helpful to you, then please like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification, and that'll keep you up to date on any new content that's coming through. And look forward to seeing you in the shop sometime real soon.